Thank you. I'll accept the motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Mr. Sargent, seconded by Ms. Dakotas. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. And we're going to have a moment of silence for Regan McCleary, Bonnie Eagle High School graduate class of 2019. Before we do that, I do want to turn the floor over to Mr. Greg Appelstein, high school principal, for some words on this fine gentleman.
Thank you. So I just wanted to share a few things from the wonderful obituary that appeared online, and I think I'll remove this, if you don't mind. So Regan grew up playing soccer for the Bonnie Eagle Soccer Club, various premier soccer clubs, and was a 4-year member of the Bonnie Eagle High School varsity boys soccer team. He was the recipient of the Most Improved Player Award, and the 2018 Most Dedicated Player Award. Regan was named to the SMAA All-Academic Team in 2018. While he was a member of the Bonnie Eagle High School Jazz Band, he won accolades for his saxophone solo performances in the district and at the State Jazz Band Festival. After graduating from Bonnie Eagle High School in the class of 2019, he went on to attend the School of Engineering at the University of Maine, majoring in mechanical engineering. He continued his love of soccer, playing on intramural teams as a freshman at UMO. Regan was the recipient of the UMaine Presidential Award, UMaine Directors Award, and the Alton S. and Adelaide B. Ham Scholarship. He was on the Dean's List for the fall of 2019 and spring of 2020 semesters. On behalf of the student, staff, faculty, and administration at Bonnie Eagle High School, we would like to share our condolences and our deepest sympathies with the McCleary family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Appelstein. And I will just say on behalf of the board, we join the community in mourning this loss, and our condolences and thoughts are with the family at this time. Thank you. And now moving on, I don't believe we have any public comment this evening, so I will turn the floor over to Mr. Marine for a special presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. This will probably be one of my last official presentations as a representative of the House of Representatives from Hollis. So on behalf of my colleagues and the delegation who represents RSU 6 in Augusta, of which we're very fortunate to have 3 senators, Senator Diamond, who has Standish, Senator Sanborn, who has Buxton, who has Leamington and Hollis. Representative Blyer from Buxton, Representative Ordway from Standish, and yours truly from Hollis. So on behalf of that group, I put in this sentiment to recognize our own Ms. Smith for her reception of an award from the Principal Association. So the sentiment reads, "Be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and House of Representatives, join in recognizing Hetty Smith of Buxton, a secretary with Regional School Unit 6, who has been named the State Secretary of the Year by the Maine Principals Association. We extend our congratulations and best wishes and order that this official expression of sentiment be sent forthwith on behalf of the 129th Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. It's signed by the President of the Senate and Speaker of the House." Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Marine, for that very much well-deserved sentiment on behalf of the legislature. We'll now move on to our student representatives' introductions and report. And before we recognize the student representatives, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Carlo our student board advisor to introduce our representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have two new board reps here with us this evening, and we would like to take the opportunity to introduce them. So, Elizabeth Forestier, could you introduce yourself first, please?
Hi, my name's Elizabeth. Council Club NHS, and I'm excited to fulfill this position and represent my student body.
Great. Welcome, Liz. Appreciate that report. Ava?
Hi, my name's Ava Dwyer. I'm in 8th grade, and I am the representative from Bonnie Eagle Middle School. I did drama club this year, and I will be doing it again this year if COVID allows it. And, yeah.
Thank you for that. And just so the board is aware, we have an alternate student rep who is not here with us tonight to oblige the COVID restrictions that we have to maintain for our safety. We also have new committee reps who were invited to introduce themselves, but I don't see any here this evening. So with that, we can move on to the student report.
Before we do that, can you introduce their names and what committees they'll be serving on?
Certainly. Mia Kovacs is the representative to the BAC in the Curriculum Committee. Kennedy Libby is the representative to the Finance Committee, and she also serves on the Budget Advisory Committee. The new student rep for the Policy Committee. Julia Ryan will be serving on the Budget Advisory Committee and Finance. Kennedy Libby will be on Finance Facilities. I think I might have. Okay.
Okay, I will now turn the floor over to our new student representatives for their report.
Okay, so for Bonnie Eagle High School, sports events have started games these past 2 weeks, and girls soccer lost to Scarborough, boys soccer lost to Scarborough and to Gorham. Field hockey had an away game tonight, and I know Shayla, the alternate, was on that team. So breakfast and lunch is free until December at the high school. Class officer elections have started, and they'll be held next week. Some clubs have started this week too, especially GSTA, and everyone's doing a great job with the new masks and protocols. At Bonnie Eagle Middle School, there was NEWA testing last week, and they're also doing a great job with protocols. And then HB Emory and Steep Falls have had school pictures on September 29th and September 30th, and a few remote students participated, and those schools are also doing a good job with the COVID protocols and SOPs, and the rest of the schools I have not received word from or an update.
Great, thank you. Ava, do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, are there any questions for our student representatives this evening? Seeing none, welcome. We're very much glad to have you here, and we look forward to working with you for the rest of the school year. I will now turn the floor over to our curriculum department, special education department, high school, and alternative education folks for a presentation of their school and department goals for the year.
Okay, can you hear me through this? Okay. So good evening. My colleagues and I have kind of done a joint presentation, a little different from the board workshop that we had a few weeks ago. This is our team. I'm Krista Poulin. I'm the curriculum coordinator.
Katie Hess, Director of Special Services.
Verily English, Assistant Director of Special Services.
Erin McGuire, 612 Curriculum Specialist.
So at the board workshop, we had done 2 separate goal sheets, and once we went through that process, we realized that we were probably better off to combine. There was a lot that was overlapping, so we decided to do one presentation. We've got a couple of goals that are for both departments, and then a goal for curriculum and a goal for special services. And Katie's going to take over goal 1.
Okay, so we're calling our first goal Bridging the Gap, and that is to work together to establish professional learning opportunities and professional dialogue across general and special education that's student-focused. So what will that look like? We are looking at updating our framework for response to intervention processes, both in academic and in social-emotional, and to provide a consistent pathway toward a special ed referral. So that there's a process and there are some earlier steps through the curriculum department and through teaming with the curriculum department and with coaches to provide instruction and intervention for kids earlier on, and then determine whether or not moving forward with special education is appropriate, or whether we can really do well by the student before they get to that process. We are going to do logs of our coach interactions. Those are our instructional coaches, and supports and feedback that they're providing to our general education and special education staff. Professional development agendas and planning will include attention to not only regular ed needs, but also special education needs and the needs of our specialists. And learning opportunities for professional development will be proactive in addressing the current educational needs of teachers in an ever-changing environment. So we've been doing a lot of work this fall, particularly on this last bullet, given the ever-changing educational environment that we're experiencing with COVID and with remote learners and with hybrid learners. And we plan to continue that work and to continue the good intervention work that has begun, particularly with flex grouping and literacy at the elementary level, as we continue to move forward through this pandemic. So how will we measure? We're going to see hopefully a reduction in special education referrals, because we will be providing really strong instruction through general education and combining our efforts to reaching kids earlier on. We're going to maintain the positive student data trajectory in literacy at the elementary level, and then continue that work at the 5th, 6th, 7th grade level, 8th grade level. Staff outcomes, we're going to have increased engagement in coaching and the coaching work around instructional strategies, not only for general ed teachers, but also for special educators, and also focus on virtual learning strategies and what high impact instruction looks like in a remote platform. Continued collaboration around data-informed decisions and student groupings, so we expect that our special educators will be working alongside general ed teachers and coaches to really look at student data and make informed, individualized decisions about next steps. For administrative outcomes, we're looking at that response to intervention framework, really aligned across our elementary schools, and then also aligned vertically from a pre-K through 12 perspective. Dedicating some professional development time to that alignment is going to be really important, and then increased and timely access to the administrative supports in place, specifically in special education.
And our second goal really does encompass both of our departments, creating environments for flexible instructional grouping, for student voice and choice, classroom differentiation that engages students in research-based relevant learning opportunities. So what will this look like? We are really committed to having consultants, our curriculum staff, our coaches, our classroom teachers, and our resource teachers collaborating to develop and to provide flexible grouping in literacy for all of our kids. Creation and implementation of both emergency, like now, and long-term remote pathways. So we are definitely creating the best we can for the situation we're in right now with the pandemic, but then also looking at that for the long term to see how we can create this to keep it sustainable. Continued reduction in referrals, as Katie had said a minute ago. Increase in percentage of those ultimately identified as needing special education. Excuse me. Our experiential classrooms at the elementary level, that's happening at Buxton and at Hollis. Our STEM and outdoor plans at the middle school. Stretch Academy from 8th grade to high school, and then our vocational and our STEM diploma at the high school. And providing targeted small group professional development that brings teachers and coaches and curriculum staff to the table to collaborate and align. So how we'll measure that? Student, staff, and admin outcomes. Student engagement and advocacy within those pathways. We want the students to advocate for what they need. Student enrollment in pathways programs. Student success in the remote pathways as measured by, excuse me, as measured by grades, and then credit attainment at 9 to 12. And for staff outcomes, we want staff using the flexible grouping with the special ed teachers, so working as a team. Increased collaboration between the resource teachers and the classroom teachers. Curriculum alignment and sequencing. And then the admin outcomes, sticking with the plans for the pathways framework, grades 3 to 12, and then creation, like I had mentioned, creation of emergency and long-term remote learning pathways.
I went to say good afternoon, but I'm wrong. Good evening. So our third goal is really more from a curriculum point of view. I kind of call it our meat and potatoes because it's driving most of what we're going to do this year. Because it's around articulating, implementing, and measuring our rigorously aligned expectations. But more importantly, about using intentional instructional strategies within our curriculum and assessment for all, and every grade level, K through 12, plus our content areas and our pathways, and making sure that we have alignment that if a student is in a pathway direction, they're still reaching all of the same goals as a student who is not in a pathway, but from a different point of view. So as we dig into this, what this looks like is a lot of project-based learning at K through 5. That's a big focus of ours this year. It's also a focus to do some project-based interdisciplinary work at the middle school to increase how often students are engaged with real-life activities. Intentional literacy skills curriculum, one of the questions you folks asked at our first meeting was, well, what does that mean? And what it really means is that we are taking the data from students in a classroom, digging down into it and looking at what skills and strategies are going to work for that group of kids that are in front of you. Because teachers can go online and find a million different strategies in the world. But what we really want to look at is what research shows us is going to work with kids that have that deficit. And then highlight those strategies and really focus on them to make the deficit go away. Implementation of a K-5 math scope and sequence. Krista's worked hard over the last couple years to put together a scope and sequence that can be implemented in K through 5 that really directs a focus on how we're going to approach math instruction. There is no doubt that we've had great increases in statistical data from our literacy. We need to put the same sort of effort into our numeracy work. And so this is a big step to making sure there's consistency in how we are attacking math. And hopefully that will also show dividends in the future. The tough part is in that first year, it's kind of catching up. So it'll take a little while before we really see what we want to see come out of that. Working to do pathways alignment. Pathways were new at the middle school this year, so we really want to sink in and work with those teachers to make sure that those programs are self-sustaining and supportive and interest-based for kids. and really give attention to how do we make that happen. And ongoing professional development in both in-person and specifically this fall in virtual high-pack instructional strategies. How do we make teachers comfortable in teaching remotely on Fridays right now? How do we help give them skills and the strategies they need? How do we build this remote pathway from the ground up is kind of where we're at right now. We started with this Edmentum program, but in terms of curriculum and making it fit to what Bonnie Eagle is and what we believe in as a district, there's going to be a lot of work on how do we make it ours and how do we make it sustainable. So, how are we going to measure all of this? One of the big measurements we're going to look for is engagement in the pathways at the high school and maintenance of kids in the pathways at middle school. So students get opt-in or get placed in middle school 7th grade. And one of the really good data points is how many choose to stay in that team or that clan for 8th grade. And what are their reasons why they want to be part of that program still. And that's really good qualitative data that we can work to use to improve the program. And how many of our students are engaging in each of the different pathways we're looking at high school. And then our student literacy data that I think we'll have a parade about because we're so proud of, but we want to maintain that and keep that work going. For staff, our office really wants to get in and look at data with teachers pre-K through 8. There's been some great work at K-5 for that. We really want to dig in and do that same level of data analysis at 6, 7, and 8. And if I have my druthers at 9 and 10 too, but one step at a time. We want to see how often our staff choose to be engaged in coaching cycles and increase our coaching usage. How do we get coaches one-on-one with teachers more often and helping move that work along? And how do we look at project-based artifacts? What is coming out of our classrooms from a different point of view? And how is our scope and sequence used for K-5 math? From our point of view, we want to make sure we are giving continual coach training so they are up to date and able to provide the best services to their teachers. Use classroom observation data to focus what additional PD we need to provide, and create opportunities in the virtual learning aspect also. Hopefully not for too long, but for as long as we need to.
And last but definitely not least, we have social emotional needs that is one of our special ed focuses. We're going to work collaboratively with curriculum leaders, building administrators, school counselors, social workers, and behavior consultants to increase student resiliency, coping strategies, supports while decreasing social, emotional, and behavioral incidents that impact learning. And what will this look like? A completed needs assessment of social, emotional, and behavioral response to intervention at 912, and updated social, emotional, behavioral response to intervention framework, K-8, continued monitoring and stability in the use of our restraint and seclusion in Compass K-5, which was reduced 71% last year, Compass handbook and entrance and exit criteria for K-12, increased staffing, shift of an ed tech, and psychological BCBA support for the Evolve, grant funded. And what will we measure for outcomes, for our student outcomes? Decreased office referrals, participation in the least restrictive environment. And for our staff outcomes, entrance and exit criteria for Compass and Evolve, increased consistency and alignment in social work and school counselor service delivery. And for administrative outcomes, ongoing supervision and professional development provided to special educators and ed techs working in intensive programs. Completed needs assessment of the social, emotional, behavioral response to intervention at 912, and that revised social, emotional, behavioral response to intervention service framework for pre-K to 12.
Sorry, I had a tickle before and I could barely talk. So yes, that's our presentation. What you have in front of you is pretty much what's on these slides, but we'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Deacon.
Thank you very much for your presentation. it's important as we develop these goals that although they're broad, and I'm just wondering, have you contemplated as a part of the goals implementation to, will the pathways, for example, not just address internal pathways, but external pathways, such as college-level courses, non-credit programs, lifelong learning? Will it be available to our vocational students and perhaps be usable in terms of extracurricular activities? Do students want to improve their skills with extracurricular activities? So I realize this is a goal and those are a lot of more detail, but in terms of understanding how the goal might be applied, I think it's helpful to get a sense of what is a picture of some of the ways it might be implemented like that.
Absolutely, great question. So with these goals, we also have further action steps that are, some of them are outlined on our PowerPoint tonight, but we even have more details. We're giving you kind of the broad overview, but it's a good question, Mr. Deacon, and I think, we are continually looking at vocational programs, continually looking at Job Corps and other kinds of things like that for kids who maybe need a different pathway outside of school. Apprenticeships, we've got a couple of kids at the high school who have teamed up with outside business providers who are offering to do some apprenticeships that they will then get high school credit for, and their special ed case manager and the guidance counselor are really the liaison between that work. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and I don't know that we even know all of the things that are out there, but I think you're right, through co-curricular and extracurricular, as well as just different pathways. Early college, one of the amazing things that happened last spring is that Southern Maine Community College offered free classes to students, given the COVID shutdown, virtually, and so to high school students, so that they could begin to take community college classes online and get a jump for free, get a jump for their next step in terms of, if they're a senior. That could have saved them a whole semester worth of coursework. And I think that carried out through the summer as well. So continuing those pathways is really important to us, absolutely. Because kids learn differently. Yeah.
Katie, I'm just going to piggyback. I think one of the specific goals that I'll move towards that is we're bringing to the curriculum committee in about 3 weeks the change from, we had co-op for a very long time. We had a wonderful co-op teacher. She was phenomenal. But co-op doesn't really exist in Maine anymore, both as a certification and as a direction in which people are going. So we have gone down the pathway of extended learning opportunities and taken that position and have taken our former JMG teacher, who has a phenomenal skill set in that area, and move them over into this. And we're going to bring to the curriculum committee, as one of our first big steps in pathways, an extended learning outcomes pathway, in which students, for a long time, this caught the kids who they worked and they struggled to get through school, they needed some extra credits, but they had a job outside of school. We still want to get those kids, but we also want to reach out to the kids who are doing internships, who we can hook up at Maine Med, or we can get to UNUM and do different sort of activities and get credit in that way too. And so this broadening of that role is going to give us the opportunity to reach out to twice as many kids and different directions. I think it's a really great thing we have coming. See you at a curriculum meeting in 3 weeks.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now turn it over to our high school folks and our alt-ed folks, whoever decided they want to go first.
We'll go first. All right. Where are we? B or A?
We're in Buxton, Maine.
Conference room? Conference room A or B? Oh, let's try this one. A. Thank you. Appreciate that. Before we start, I need to apologize to the McCleary family. I believe I pronounced Regan's name as Reagan twice, so my apologies. That is Regan McCleary. So our team consists of us here and, of course, Eric, who's not with us tonight, Greg Appelstein, principal, Alicia Adams, interim assistant principal, Eric, as I said, who's not with us this evening, Tom Noonan, assistant principal, and Selena Levitt, interim dean of students. And ultimately, we're teaming this presentation, so I believe I'll have Selena come up and overview it, and then Alicia will follow.
So just a brief snapshot of the high school. We have 1,140 students at this time, and that's just 10 more than at this time last year. We have multiple different advanced courses in AP, dual enrollment for Stats and Calc through USM. Early college for me, we've had a lot of students signing up for that, and we have more than usual AP for me because of the remote learners. They are choosing to pick up some AP classes through AP for me. We have lots of clubs and sports and activities that are still going. They're going remotely. And multiple pathways, our STEM diploma, Stretch Academy, and our online pathway that we're hoping will transform and stick around after COVID. We also have the reciprocity English credit through WRVC, partnered with one of our teachers here at the high school.
So our first goal is focused on behavior and climate, and it's really about consistency. And it is that we will develop and revise consistent practices to support students, teachers, and stakeholders to foster a strong and healthy learning environment. So one of the things that we really want to focus on this year, one of our goals is always about communication and working with our parents and families and making sure that they have a strong understanding of what's going on at the high school. During COVID, we definitely realized that you have to find other ways to communicate, so that's when we started offering our Google Meets, and we want to continue that and offer that at least once a trimester, if not more, to try to make sure that we are keeping that communication going. We also want to increase our use of Naviance, which is a college and career program for our students, and it helps to connect them with their future goals and with colleges. One of the things that we've already started using is our weekly communication templates, where our teachers are sending home emails each week to each of their students and parents, letting them know what does the week look like, what's the learning target, and what activities are they going to do to reach that target. We really are trying to make that really clear to parents. We had heard previously during COVID that was a struggle, so we're trying to improve in that area. We also are working on exploring opportunities to educate on mental health needs. That's something that the district has really focused on and that we are working on at the high school as well. And then as an admin team, we want to be visible, accessible, and role modeling. If we're expecting our teachers to be, we are expecting our teachers to be using the AFL strategies and to be focused on the learning targets and providing feedback, and so we are trying to do that same thing. And we are going to measure this. One of the ways is through panorama surveys, so giving surveys both at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year to determine if we are successful. We want to make sure that we're increasing our use of Naviance, really working through our advisory program and increasing the use there, and working with our student services program because they really help in that way. To determine if our communication with families is consistent, we can actually gather a lot of this data through Synergy, and we can see if families are opening the emails and just making sure that that's happening, and also the surveys with the parents will help us determine that. And then our classroom observations will help us to determine if the practices that we're modeling are actually being used in the classroom. And those are just a few of the key overviews of that goal.
So goal number 2, articulate, implement, and measure intentionally used instructional strategies to support the alignment of the curriculum and assessment across all pathways. a couple things that we've pulled from the longer document that I believe you have a copy of regarding what this might look like. Utilizing our instructional coaches to help train teachers to embed assessment for learning tools and high-impact strategies into the content. The group that presented before us alluded to that. They made mention of the coaches as well. And we're really fortunate to have those two individuals assisting us throughout this school year, much like they have in the past. We want to increase the utilization of student performance data to inform curriculum development, identify gaps in current pathways, and build pathways for all learners. We have an abundance of data. There's no doubt about that. And carving out the time, the intentional time that it takes to begin to drill down into that data, that's something we want to pursue this year. And we have a couple ideas for how we would go about doing that. The information is in there, it's available to us, and we need to spend some time taking a look at that data, finding out where the gaps are, and creating some opportunities for students that we may not have thought of as of yet to help them continue on their pathways. In line with that, moving students into a pathway which aligns with their learning style and future goals. Again, these are a few of the pathways that we offer: Stretch Academy, the vocational options, AP courses, the ELOs that Ms. McGuire just mentioned, the STEM diploma, the remote learning pathway, which again is new this year, that we're all experiencing as we try to navigate through that. And the last bullet, collaborate with our 612 administrator on special assignment, Ms. McGuire, to teach staff and students how to become assessment literate and how to articulate their learning. And so hopefully we can continue the work and make it student friendly so that when students are talking about assessments, both formative and summative, that they're conversing about their learning goals, targets, standards, etc., in conversations with each other, with the teacher of record, maybe with an administrator, maybe even with their families. So that's what that looks like. And then 4 bullets again from a longer list that we pulled from. We'll know that we're being successful when we have improved formative assessment quality, resulting in increased student engagement as measured by teacher observations, student grades, observed use of descriptive feedback, aligning our curriculum between pathways. Again, there are a couple examples there, so that students are experiencing the same standards, goals, and targets as they progress their way through the pathways. And then lastly, increased student achievement as measured by the summative assessments and grades, and the drop in students needing credit recovery. And I'll toss it to our closer, Mr. Tom Noonan.
So our third goal is social emotional learning, and it's to help teachers and students reach their highest potential. Bonnie Eagle High School administration will work to support the mental health of staff and students. So what this looks like is, obviously we're going to provide staff support, and that varies week to week. Sometimes it's a quick survey to say, how's it going? We did that after the first remote Friday. Other times it's walking around the school, kind of informally, kind of getting a pulse of the building to see what they need, because this year is stressful and unlike any other. And we also provide new staff training and support for our new staff members. We have a professional learning group that's led by a couple faculty members, and they run through everything from nuts and bolts of the grade book to managing time to the inner workings of the building that we don't necessarily cover when they're first hired in the summertime. We're also going to track students' needs. There was a mention earlier of the Panorama survey. We also have a MyHa survey data, and last year the interim principal, Michael Johnson, formed a group with our social workers, our student services department, to gather a bunch of data about kind of the students' perception of the building and how their needs are being met or not met, and what we can do moving forward during, and this was again pre-COVID, but now during COVID, what we can do to be more responsive to their needs. And then once we start to get a handle of some of this material and the needs, we'll start to share that with the faculty and the staff. Mr. Penna started some of that work with our trauma-based instruction on Friday mornings with our champion group. I definitely visualize that being a spinoff with some of the work we can do in the building. I plan to hopefully get together with that team that was with Mr. Johnson last year to help move forward to see what we can do to provide the needs for the building. And then finally, we have what's called professional learning groups, and there's already been an interest with one of our, Ms. McGuire later this month is going to help train this group to lead monthly meetings with teachers to do a range of things and looking at student data, student work, teacher work assessments, et cetera, troubleshoot, but also potentially looking at the social and emotional needs of not only our teachers, but also our students, and sharing information on that. And how we know we're successful? The students and staff are gonna, it's a tough one. It's gonna be a lot of kind of interviews. We can, again, do a panorama survey, but a lot of it's just getting the pulse of the building. Sometimes social and emotional health and wellness is intangible, and everybody's perception is their reality. And so, we're definitely gonna have to spend some time doing interviews, teacher observations, talking to kids, talking to staff, and hopefully they'll start to see an increased feeling of safety among everyone in the building. Also start to maybe see some of the coping strategies that we'll be sharing with everyone being utilized. Less incident referrals in the main office, less traffic in the main office, less hanging out in student services, and hopefully more learning going on within the building. And with that, there'll be an efficient and consistent use of safety plans and protocols to help kids work through some of that stress, as well as the teachers. And again, there's a more detailed explanation of this, like Greg mentioned, in our document that we shared with you. And I'd like to thank Erin McGuire for the great deal that she got on this template for. Yeah. And that's it. So any questions?
Great, thank you. Mr. Deacon?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Again, I realize these are goals and they're broad. And my comment and question is, I see Naviance is something that's still relatively new in our district, but I think it's a great tool and one which has a lot of potential, especially in the current circumstances that we have because of the way in which students to work on their own, the parents is to get information about colleges and other information beyond our own district. So are there, besides Naviance, are there other tools that you may have been thinking about that might enhance your ability to implement these schools that we should think about? Because I think Naviance has been shown, and I'm glad that our district has adopted that, but there must be other tools that can enhance what we're doing, and if there are, please bring it to our attention so that we can be sure to support you.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing actually this Friday during our teacher workshop day is there was a group of teachers and a school counselor, I'm trying to think what else, social worker. They met last year in the spring pre-COVID and kind of finished their work during COVID in the spring to take a look at how we're using our advisory time, what we're doing over the 4 years, and how we can kind of button that up and tighten that to prepare kids for their transition into the world, whether they go to the military, college, work world, et cetera. And we're going to continue that work on Friday, and the plan is to say, what does that look like during COVID? How do we meet, et cetera? So they might use Naviance partly during advisory, but it'll also be things that we generate that we know works. I'd also like to bring, Mr. Burleson in as well, and the JMG teacher as well, because they have a lot of expertise in that world of work, which is a whole other avenue and pathway for the kids.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Elizabeth.
So in regards to Naviance, when are the students going to be able to more closely use that? Because I know advisories aren't working right now due to COVID and like the classroom restrictions.
Well, to play off of what Mr. Noonan said, we have a bit of a training on Friday for staff on our in-service day this Friday. We're also having that meeting to discuss ways that we can tweak advisory to make it better in light of the hybrid and/or on remote Fridays. Once those two things happen, I think we would be in a better position to answer that question as far as how do we roll it out in advisories, when would we roll it out in advisories. So rather than saying when we might do that now, if I come back in 2 weeks, I'll have a better sense of that after those groups meet.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Mr. Lenny Holmes.
Thank you. I may have to, in lieu of the steaming glasses that all us old people seem to be suffering from. So what I thought I would do, because I know there are several new board members here, I thought I would just kind of give you a little bit more information about the Learning Center, the alternative education program at the high school. Our team, I'm the director of the program. This is my 4th year as the director of the alternative ed program. We have 3.5 core teachers in English, science, social studies, and math. We were lucky enough this year, a science teacher we hired as a replacement also has math certification, so are able to offer a little bit more math. So we have 3 courses, 3 classes of math and 3 classes of science this year. Last year we were at 4 and just 2 1-and-1. We have part-time elective teachers that come down. First trimester, it's our health and PE. Second trimester, or actually third, is fine arts, and then we get a language culture teacher comes down to teach electives. Because one of the things about our program is we're a lot, and we'll see that shortly here, we have a lot of students who are credit deficient when they come to us, and they really need to make up those core classes to get themselves back on pace to graduate. So we frequently, we don't have a lot of electives to offer them, so we have teachers come down from the high school to offer those elective courses for them. 2 special ed staff, a full-time teacher and an ed tech, and we also have a full-time social worker in the program. Right now, we serve about 45 to 50 students. We're off-site at the Frank Jewett School, so we're not at the high school. All our courses are standards-based courses, except for those electives. And what that means is, for example, instead of having an English 9 or an English 10, we'll do reading comprehension and reading interpretation. That will be the actual course, which is the standards in English. We made that move a couple of years ago, and it's been very beneficial, especially because we have so many mixed grades. So we'll have classes with a 10th grader and a 9th grader and 11th, they're all across the board. So in making that move to going on our courses all based off the standards, it gives us a little more flexibility and the teachers some more flexibility in the design of their classes. 90% of our students are considered, and it might even be higher than 90, credit deficient upon entry. So one of the ways we identify students for our program is through just really taking a look at where they are with credits. Somebody who's done their 9th grade year and maybe they only have 2.5, 3 credits. So we begin the process of selecting students, really looking at those students who have fallen behind. We have each trimester, we take in new students. We have a waiting list each trimester as well. Probably on average, we have 25 to 30 kids we consider for 5 to 8 spots each trimester for our program. We have probably about 55% of our students receive special ed services as well. We have 3 core pillars: try, true, and be civil. One of the things about the Learning Center is we realize we're trying to, besides get them their credits and get them back on pace, is we're trying, we work very hard at giving them those skills that they'll need for life. And the try is simply we ask them to make efforts and actually, get involved with any one of the programs that we might be doing, whether it's coursework, whether it's our service trips, which of course we're not able to do as much right now, or any other parts of the program. That's the skill of understanding, making an effort, and trying is invaluable for young people. So we really want to stress that. True is what it says. Be truthful. In life, people will have much more respect, and they'll forgive mistakes if you're truthful about them. So we really talk about the benefits of just being true. And then being civil is kindness, treating each other with the same way you want to be treated, all those characteristics of being civil. So that kind of just gives you a quick background. Like I said, I know there are new members here who may not be as familiar with the Learning Center as others. As everyone else, social and emotional learning is one of our goals. The Learning Center will work with students to help develop and improve the mindsets, skills, attitudes, and feelings that help students succeed in school, career, and life. This is in alignment with the board's strategic goal number 2. And what we're looking for outcomes, and I'm actually going to kind of take you through something that might give you even a better idea of what we're talking about, but we've used the survey tool. We started our school year with that to kind of see where our students were at. And this, you've heard that term, Panorama Survey. Panorama is just a company that provides free surveys to schools to use, vetted by the educational leaders and the people who put those together. But what I wanted to show you real quick, just to show you how we're using those. And I'm gonna have to blow this up. We're gonna go this way. It's always slow when you do this way. There we go. And 1 second, there it goes, as I thought. And so what you'll see here, this is part of that survey deals with grit. When they talk about grit, is how well students are able to persevere through setbacks to achieve important long-term goals, not just limited to academics, taking into account their experience and identities. So in that survey, there's a whole bunch of questions that deal with grit. And you can see on the bottom, there's growth mindset, and there's a whole list of those SEL characteristics that are measured. But one of the ones I pulled out of here is, the question was asked to our students, how often do you stay focused on the same goal for several months at a time? 1 being kind of not at all, towards 5 meaning I do that, yeah, I'm very, very good at that, I'm excellent. So what I've identified here is, and this top number you see is under 1, 30.8, that means 30.8% of the kids, those were the students who have never been with us before. And then the second row of numbers are the students who've been in our program. So I wanted to kind of compare the two to see if maybe we've had some impact on students already who've been in our program. But overall, trying to identify areas where we can help our students work to get better at those type of skills. And so this one here, we can see, for the students who've never been with us, 100% of them said that they're not very good at that at all. The number 3 would mean I do it a little bit or somewhat. And then 85% of the students who've been there. So every Monday we're having we're calling it our Mental Health Monday. We have a certain time set aside where we identify areas like this where we can begin to work with students on how do you stay focused on a goal for more than just that short period of time, an important life skill. And that's a lot what the social and emotional learning is geared at, helping students get to those places. So we've used that tool, and you see it there. The other outcome for this goal is that teachers will gain a greater understanding of the SEL needs of our students at TLC. And then also as an alternative education place where, part of our plan is built on that premise of fostering positive teacher-student relationships. We're going to become more informed on whether these interventions we're having will have an impact, because we'll do this survey again midway through the year and at the end of the year. So we're seeing if we're making any movement or having any impact on those goals. Project-based learning. The Learning Center will develop thematic, interdisciplinary, project-based learning activities for all students at the end of each trimester, which will include a public exhibition of their work. The PBL will have a direct relationship to current issues and topics in our world. So what this is really, we're trying, a big point of emphasis for us is moving students towards doing work that actually represents what's going on in their lives. Our students are very pragmatic. They very often ask that question, when am I going to ever see this? When am I ever going to have to use this? So we want to be able to provide those answers for them, and putting on these project-based learning activities. We're going to hopefully that will show some more engagement, completion, and comprehension in what we're doing. It's, as I mentioned, we use all the core curriculums, the math, science, English, and social studies, and whatever they choose. And we started this at the end of last year, our second trimester. We did our first go-around. And even the fact that we made them present to everybody else in the building was one step further for them in terms of their growth, as they were able to kind of come out of their shell. Many of them who've never talked in front of a group of people at least put out their exhibition. And it gives us more emphasis on the cross-curriculum work, which will lead teachers to continue conversations on making these work relevant to their real lives. So besides just what we're doing for those last 2 or 3 weeks of each trimester, hopefully the teachers begin to gain that understanding that the more they do that in the classroom, the more our students will be successful. And you've seen this on everybody's, I believe, high-impact instructional strategies. Will become more adept at using and incorporating high-impact instructional strategies in the classroom. It'll improve their ability to identify the right, and this is one of the big ones for me from what I've been observing, is identify the right strategy for their instructional plan, so that they can begin to make those connections. And that's alignment with board strategic goal number 1. We're having our school coach comes with us and stays in our building on Wednesdays. We've set up times for Kate Dumont to meet with our teachers and really begin to push them on this part. Our teachers tend to be awesome and really good at forming relationships with kids and really kind of re-engaging students who become disengaged in education. And I just feel like if we can now begin to kind of move on that science of teaching and using strategies that are proven to work, you know, we'll become even further capable of helping these students move along. And so we'll see the increase in engagement and completion. And then I do a trimester pass-fail report each year, or each trimester, and I'm hoping that I will see reductions in failures by percentages for the core subjects. And that's that.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Holmes this evening? Great. Well, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the goals presented by the administrative team. Moved by Mr. Sargent, seconded by Mrs. Kreutz. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Our student representatives can vote if you'd like. Great. It is unanimous, thank you. I'll now move on to our consent agenda. We have approval of the September 21st, 2020 regular board meeting minutes, teacher appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. Teresa Jewell, school nurse, district-wide. Lisa Payne, school nurse at the high school. Caitlin Toto, art teacher at the middle school. Co-curricular appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. At the high school, soccer program volunteer. Adam Begos, middle school activities director. Robert Laprise. Community School Advisor, Julie Johnston. Cross-country coach, grade 6, 7, 8, Benjamin Davis. Assistant cross-country coach, grade 6, 7, 8, Todd Drinkwater. Field hockey coach, grade 7, Jennifer McIntosh. Field hockey coach, grade 8, Elizabeth Deering. History Day Advisor, Robert Laprise. Math Team Advisor, Kayla Tremblay. Newspaper Advisor, Andrew Damaris. Grade 7 boys soccer coach, Hossein Miramati. Grade 8 boys soccer coach, Lawrence Robertson. Grade 7 girls soccer coach, Sean Curran. Grade 8 girls soccer coach, Michelle Riesbeck. Student council advisor, grades 7 and 8, Donna Norton. And yearbook advisor, Andrew Damaris. Entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Moved by Mrs. Kreutz, seconded by Ms. Dakotas. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Bruni.
Does anybody have an update on what's happening with fall sports for the middle school? Like, I know that Mr. Curtis came and gave us an update on what was happening at the high school, and we're just approving all of these, and I haven't seen anything happening with middle school fall sports.
Yeah, we're not participating interscholastically. We're going to be participating intramural. So what you're seeing here for those stipends, those are the full stipends that were in that's in Schedule B. But again, like the high school activities, they're going to be receiving a probably 33% of that stipend, given the number of kids that participate, in the amount of time that they run their program, which is going to probably be like 4 weeks, but it's all going to be intramural. And there's at least 60 kids signed up currently to participate in this as it is.
So, thank you. So when you say the third, is that based on what we did back in the spring, right? Because the high school coaches, are they only receiving a third of their stipend?
Although the high school coaches are competing, except for football and
Right.
volleyball, the rest, so they are competing and they have a season. And they have
Okay.
activities, so they will receive their stipends as usual.
Okay.
Other than football and volleyball, who are doing activities, so they're down to a third of what there is, and we'll see what happens in the spring, in these programs as well. We're going
Okay.
to receive a percentage of it as opposed to the entire one where there's competitions.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Mr. Carlo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question about the student council advisor position. It says it's only for grades 7 and 8. Why isn't the 6th grade included in that?
Do you know the history of that, Mr. Harris? I'm not sure the history of it. I know it hasn't, I think they have their own little group thing. I'm not sure, but he can explain it.
Yeah,
No,
so
yeah.
my understanding is that when Bonnie Eagle Middle School went from junior high to middle school, they added 6th grade, and for some reason that was one of those things that they just always kept, where they had a 6th grade student council and then a 7th and 8th grade student council. That's the way it's been since 1995 or whatever, is my understanding. They've done a lot of things together, so like in the past, Mrs. Duhamel and Mrs. Norton worked together between 6th and 7th and 8th grade, and Mrs. Duhamel backed out of doing it this year, and we're currently looking for a 6th grade advisor, and we'll go to the negotiations committee in the future, potentially, and talk about maybe having an advisor and an assistant advisor and making it 6th, 7th, and 8th grade combined.
Thank you.
All right?
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous. And for my report this evening, I just wanted to make the board aware, I have received some concerns that there are some board members who haven't been abiding by our meeting norms, in particular the use of electronics with emails and texting and things like that. So we did include in our packet a copy of the meeting norms, and it is on the walls for your review. I'd encourage you to please look those over and make sure that you review those. You did receive an email from the Maine School Boards Association, and I also forwarded that email to you as well. There is a Region 9 virtual MSBA School Boards meeting on October 8th, this Thursday. Hope you can all attend. Student representatives are invited to that as well, and we'll make sure you have the link to participate. And as you've heard the last few meetings, the 47th Annual MSMA Virtual Fall Conference is scheduled Friday and Saturday, October 30th and the 31st. Hope you all, again, can participate in that if you can, and if you have not done so already, please do contact Mrs. Smith by Wednesday to let her know that you would like to participate in this. Are there any questions for me before we move on to the ad hoc committee report? Seeing none, I'll turn the floor over to Mrs. Kreutz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Ad Hoc Strategic Committee met last week. We reconvened the group. It's a great group of mix of administrators, board members, and staff. We reviewed the current plan just to get consensus that we wanted to continue with it, given that we're potentially looking at some difficult financial years coming ahead, as well as some of the challenges that we're working through with COVID. And the consensus was that it's a robust plan, and we will be able to continue to use these goals, and we just may adjust how we implement those goals. So moving forward, the plan is that we're going to bring together expert groups for each of our 6 goals, and those groups are going to be folks within the schools who can actually help us figure out, when we're creating these action plans, what is feasible. We need people that are on the ground, people who really know the ins and outs of this before we settle on particular action goals. We wouldn't want the board to come in and say, we want you to do one thing, only to have the teachers and administrators not be able to execute on that. So we will be bringing in these groups to talk about the 2- and 5-year action plans, and the way we're going to keep the board involved is we will have at least one board member at those 6 different groups as they get convened, and that board member will serve sort of as the compass point to keep us moving in a forward direction so that we can continue to maintain this is what the goal is and this is how we propose to keep moving it forward, just to be that voice and have the oversight, but the board members likely will not be adding a whole lot to the conversation. And the way we're going to start with this is we're going to start with one group at a time, one of the goals at a time. One of the concerns we have is we don't want to bite off more than we can chew. But we want to keep moving and make sure we address all of these goals. So we're going to be starting with goal 2, which is the social and emotional learning. We're going to bring a group together in a couple of weeks and sort of work out what does it look like to start to work through these action steps. So we'll probably meet at least a couple of times to establish what is the cadence, how difficult or easy is it going to be to establish these action steps, and then we'll be able to take that as a template and roll forward with the additional 5 goals, hopefully within a relatively short period of time, but not, again, going so fast that we end up making goals that we aren't going to be able to succeed in. Any questions?
Great, thank you very much, Mrs. Kreitz. And I'll now turn the floor over to Mr. Penna for his report.
Thank you. I want to congratulations to Bonnie Eagle Middle School for the designation of gold status by the Maine Health 5210 Let's Go program. And I'll read you the email that got sent there. Let's Go, an obesity prevention initiative. We'd like to thank you and your staff for participating in our 2019-20 program, especially during the global pandemic. Schools are recognized when they are implementing and communicating Let's Go environmental and policy strategies that support healthy eating and active living. We are pleased to announce that Bonnie Eagle Middle School is recognized Let's Go site for the 2019-2020 program year. We applaud the efforts of Donna Jordan, who oversees the Let's Go work at the school. Reaching this status is no easy task. During the 2020-21 school year, monthly resources will be shared with your Let's Go School site champion on the staff wellness, participating safely in physical activity, and strategies to support families' healthy eating habits at home. Thank you for partnership with Let's Go. We appreciate all you do to create a healthy environment. Congratulations, Bonnie Eagle Middle School, Casey Marcotte, the Let's Go champion coordinator. So congratulations, Sahara happens to be with us tonight. So congratulations to your crew and the work you do there of a healthy and supporting this program, because it's one of the district efforts that we continue to try to work with, and it's nice to see that you've stepped up and put that on the map and got the gold. Yeah. Your resignation, as you can see in your, is Michael Diamond, secondary math teacher at Bonnie Eagle Middle School, will be resigning effective October 22nd. The staff support and hires and resignations are all in your packet as well. And you'll see that the donations is quite a long list. But again, I want to thank all of those who have donated to the district backpack program. That's what that long list is, of everyone who has made great contributions to that program. And that's how we sustain those efforts of helping food instability in our district. And we really want to thank them very, very much. We want to thank Staples.
I just want to interject here, Mr. Penna.
Go ahead.
Want to thank all these donations, and for those who may be listening and want to donate, how can they do that?
They send a donation into the backpack program, which comes into central office, where we're monitoring all the money as well. Or they can send it to their school, and their champion at their school will get it to us in the office. So anytime they want to donate, actually the easiest way for them, generally for families, is to send a check, give that money into the school, and then the school processes it through, and we're maintaining the budget here in the business office.
Very good, thank you.
You're very welcome. That's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to thank Staples Teacher Rewards Program for a donation of $250 gift card to benefit Miss Mundy's classroom at H.B. Emery Junior Memorial School. Thank you to the Campus Box Media LLC for a donation of $52.39 to benefit the Bonnie Eagle High School Athletics Program. And thank you to Pine Root Farms for a donation of pumpkins and all fall decorations for Edna Libby School, a value of $50. And that's the end of my report. Just other I'd like to mention, there is, and we'll talk about it a little bit later and as we go towards my goals, but the COVID work is daily work. There's not a day that goes by that we don't spend quite a bit of time dealing with the issues, including we start in the morning with an FAQ meeting with the school nurses and building administrators that we get in to make sure that we're consistent and on the same page about what's happening in our schools and how to make sure we manage and handle concerns or questions that are raised, so it's not, not just a flurry of activities throughout the day, but it is a daily daily activity, as you can just well expect, of work that we need to do to maintain priority, and priority one is safety. Teachers, we're, again, continue to work a lot to support the remote instruction, and I'll talk about that later as well. There's a lot of work involved in that. I know we're using Edmentum now. That's not our long-term goal at all, but it was a stopgap measure for us to get moving with remote education, and there's a lot of work happening. And I'll also talk a little bit about the technology we're looking at of immersing our system in so that we can become a synchronous learning environment for students on remote education. The CARES Act application, we've done 2 of them. We've received one, the $2.7 million is already been approved. The 447 was still pending, and a few extra little things that they're asking questions of, like $80 items that we want to make sure that they're clear about how we may spend that $80. And we were beginning our work on CARES 2 application. So that'll be very similar. Given the timeline, which is December 30th, to spend this money, it's going to be very similar in design when we do the CARES 2. I'll be working with Bill with that probably the rest of the week, get that packaged up. It's going to have to be big ticket items that we can actually get done and actually purchased before the end of the December 30th. So unless that gets extended, there's a significant amount of money that needs to be spent. And so just a quick general idea, just so you know what's happening in COVID. I checked the site, again, the CDC site, the main government site, on Friday, and out of 19,000 plus residents that we have in our communities, we have 124 active cases. So that's where we are with that, and so we'll update some other things as we go on to our meeting later tonight.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for the superintendent? Mrs. Atkinson.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to know, it's been 2 weeks since we met and discussed preparations for getting the kids back to school full-time. And I know there are a few hurdles to that. So can you speak on the planning process, where that stands, and what are some of the barriers that are still in front of us for that?
Yep, we're working on that. As I said to the board, we didn't make one plan for 3 months. We made one plan for a month. And so the second meeting of every month, I will be reporting back to the board as to where we are in our progress with our current plan and what the options may be for additional plans moving forward, should we not turn red before that time. But that's an ongoing process. Again, we'll talk about that later as well. But the second meeting of every month, we will have an update. We'll have an action discussion item on the agenda. This is where we are with our current hybrid plan, and here are some suggestions, or a suggestion about where we could possibly go, and here's the pros and cons about that. So that's ongoing work currently, and when we meet again, our next board meeting, we'll have an action discussion item on the agenda.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Penna. And I'll now turn forward to Mr. Brockman for the action item to adopt a resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of 4 New Maintenance Vehicles and Principal Amount.
You have in your packet the resolution that will authorize the lease with Gorham Savings in the amount of $192,000 for 4 vehicles, the 2 pickup trucks, a Ford Transit cargo van, and a Ford cabin chassis with a rack body. We have received 2 of those vehicles. 2 are still on order and will be here within probably another couple of weeks. One of them is away getting the rack body put on. The other one, they're trying to locate a vehicle so that it meets our specs. Soon as we have all 4 vehicles, we will be outfitting them with a V-plow for each of the vehicles, and there'll be hopper sanders on the larger ones. So they'll be ready to go in case it snows next week. I hope not, but the lease with Gorham is 1.6%, so it's a very good rate.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Brockman? Mrs. Bruni?
So
Yep.
you're probably expecting this, right? So one of the things that I've always kind of talked about was around the lettering of
Yep.
them. And so can you just talk a little bit about, like, are they coming from the dealership that way, or what's happening with that?
No, usually what we do is we make up the decals. For the maintenance vehicles, it will be the same decal that we had on the older trucks. There's one vehicle that will be used by technology, and they have their own logo. They're working on that right now. And we're going to do something a little bit different with the food service vehicle. We're going to wrap the food service vehicle with something that's really appropriate for hauling food around to kids. So the director is working on the design of that. And I don't know if you've seen, Wyndham has a vehicle that they have done that to, wrapped it, and it's really nice looking. So we're hoping to get that going. And she has the vehicle today, is the first day for it. And they're working on the design. So as soon as we have them all in and they have the decals back, we'll be installing them. We knew that you would ask.
So I just have a follow-up question. So I know that there's been some inconsistencies on them, right, Bill? So moving forward as we get new vehicles, are they all going to, like, on the doors, like, lettered the same exact way regardless?
Well,
just different, whether it's technology or...
There'll be, the technology and the maintenance one will be quite similar. That food service one is going to look completely different.
Yep, no, that's totally fine. And so the food service one, when you talk about the wrapping, I'm assuming that in the event that we're like, hey, we need to put that into service for somewhere else, these are just decals that are on there that can be removed. It's not painted.
Yeah.
So it always has to be a food services. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Great. Well, I'll entertain a motion then to accept the resolution as presented. Moved by Mrs. Bruni, seconded by Mr. Sargent. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll now turn the floor over to Mr. Penna for the presentation of the district's All Hazards Emergency Management Plan for the 2020-2021 school year.
You have a copy of that plan. This is the public plan that we annually, the board needs to approve the plan. There have been no changes to that plan for this year.
Great. I'll entertain a motion to approve the plan as presented. Moved by Mr. Sargent. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Bruni. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. And I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Carlo for the Policy Committee report of September 21st, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On September 21st, Policy Committee convened at Central Office to review 3 policies and a couple administrative procedures, to which I believe there were not any changes to the rules. The 3 policies that we reviewed were BIA, and the Policy Committee wanted clarification about the board member orientation process. Traditionally, there have been 2 orientations that have occurred. One, a meeting with the board chair, new members, and the superintendent, and of course another when MSBA delegates come to present to the board, the whole board. Moving forward, the Policy Committee asked the superintendent to have those 2 meetings with new board members individually. For DJ, which is the second policy that we reviewed, Mr. Brockman proposed a revised version that was more aligned with federal procurement policy. The old one was outdated and was not assigned the correct code. So the Policy Committee reviewed that, and I believe that's up for first reading this evening. And for DJH, we approved the MSMA sample, which was more in line with federal guidance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Carlo? Seeing none, do you have anything further to add for policies for first reading?
No, I do not.
Okay. Are there any questions on the policies for first reading? Seeing none, now for the policies for second reading.
There have been no changes to the policies that are up for second reading.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the policies for second reading as presented. Moved by Mrs. Dakota, seconded by Mr. Sargent. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. And I'll now turn the floor over to Mrs. Bruni for the Negotiations Committee reports of September 23rd and September 30th.
Thank you. We met on September 23rd for an executive session with the Saco Valley teachers, or the SVTA, on a proposal for a pandemic leave bank. And then we also talked about the exit interviews. So Jen came back and gave us some updates based on the last meeting, and so just trying to finalize the exit interview so that we can collect data that is usable for us. And then on September 30th, we met with in executive session with the Saco Valley Licensed Practitioner or Practical Nurses Association in order to continue negotiations on their contract. And we also had a review of a revised job description for the Adult Education Program Coordinator, which is also on the agenda for tonight. And Mr. Penna just gave us an update on the substitute teacher salaries that he was going to be bringing to the policy committee. And that was it.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Mrs. Bruni? Seeing none, I'll turn the floor back over to Mrs. Bruni for the presentation of the revised job description for the Adult Education Program Coordinator.
Okay. So Linda Watson did come and talk to us, so you have a copy of the revised job description in your packet. There is somebody currently in that position, so we're not looking to fill the position. There were just some changes so that it better aligns with what that person's actual job responsibilities or duties.
Great, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to accept the revised job description. Moved by Mr. Sargent, seconded by Mrs. Kreutz. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. Upcoming board meetings and workshops. Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, Finance Facilities Committee meeting at 4 o'clock in the conference room. Monday, October 19th, we have Policy Committee meeting at 4:30 and a regular board meeting at 6 o'clock. Now entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A to review the superintendent's 2020-2021 school year goals. Moved by Mr. Carlo. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Sargent. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.